Namaste. So, as always, we'll just have a little background and then invite questions. Um, the subject is war of narratives, and basically, it was that as we are rising as a nation and navigating through life, so we see that Indian thought, Sanatan Dharma, Indian nation as a whole is being challenged. I would use the word challenged. Threatened is one way to look at it, but I prefer that whenever there is a so called threat, it's a challenge. Why? The difference is when we are threatened, we shrink. But when we are challenged, we overcome. So, in general principle of life, this word threatened is not a very healthy word because there is a tendency to shrink. So we see that in the beginning, when we had this peak of subjugation of India in the previous century and before that, we had this threat from outside and we shrank. We almost started following unwittingly many of the ways of the what we call today Vidharmis, adopted certain ways of life because we felt threatened. But slowly that period is over. Now, that thanks to the grace, thanks to great ones, now we are in a position where we can take on all these things as a challenge. And we should take it as a challenge. And challenge means we should overcome it. But to overcome it, we need to first understand our own powers, our own strengths. What we are doing very often is simply condemning. This phase is more or less over, but when I was growing up as a child, there was a tendency just to condemn. Everything Western is bad, everything other than Indian is bad. That doesn't help us much, but it's the first line of defense. So there was a general attitude, idea, approach that anything which is also done elsewhere is bad. But this will not last because we are entering into a world which is going to move towards unity. But unity in diversity. That means each nation will have its own strength, its own value, and it has to come together and weave a garland of nations, if I may put it, for the Divine Mother, Universal Mother. So we have to have a mutual understanding, meaning thereby the clash has to change into a clasp and mutual benefiting from each other. This is the tendency toward the future. And today or tomorrow we have to take that way. But why this challenge came? So that's important. And I'll just read a passage from Sri Aurobindo. And I have been talking about it, but let me read it in little more full clarity and power. So, why India became subject to the Muslims and the Europeans? Actually, it never became fully subject. That's the greatness of India. That's what I keep saying. We should stop using the word that India. India is the only country which has never been conquered. I am putting it like this. Why? Because conquest is not just a bodily conquest. But conquest is where the spirit of a people is conquered. Wherever the European civilization and the Islamic invasion went, they conquered, literally conquered, because we have nothing left of the paganism, of the Druids of Ireland. We have nothing left of the great, even Roman gods, Egyptian civilization, Greek civilization, French, nothing is left actually. So it's a conquest because conquest is when somebody accepts defeat. So one of the things that Indian spiritual thought teaches us, and we see that persistently in Ramayana and Mahabharata, nothing is lost till all is lost. And all is lost means the spirit. So Indian spirit never accepted defeat. So there were pockets where many places where outwardly they were captured, but there was always people who displayed resistance. And that's how they could come up and fight back. I've told about these stories of Shivaji, Maharana Pratap, and many others, Guru Gobind Singh, plenty of them If you go to the Far East, Odisha, there have been such wonderful resistances. But still, why we fell? So here is Sri Aurobindo in Renaissance of India. He says, European writers, struck by the general metaphysical bent of the Indian mind, by its strong religious instincts and religious idealism, by its otherworldliness, are inclined to write as if this were all the Indian spirit. An abstract, metaphysical, religious mind, overpowered by the sense of the infinite, not apt for life, dreamy, unpractical, turning away from life and action as Maya. This, they said, is India. See, that's what we see even, I think, a decade back, or when one of the, I think, American president even started lecturing, you are supposed to be a tolerant nation coming from the land of Gandhi, and you're supposed to, tolerance is equal to accepting all the nonsense. So this is how an American president had made a remark. Even in the United Nations, something of this kind was said, that they couldn't imagine how India could strike back. So here he says, this is what was taught to us. And now mark Sri Aurobindo's words, and for a time Indians in this as in other matters submissively echoed their new Western teachers and masters. They learned to speak with pride of their metaphysics, of their literature, of their religion, but in all else they were content to be learners and imitators. So this spirit we still find. We speak of, we're very happy that we have Vedanta, but when it comes to science and other things, we say in the past we had this. This is not how a nation can rise. So we have to understand what was their secret in the Vedanta, in the Tantra, or wherever you find that secret, which entered into politics and made it sublime, which entered into money, Artha Shastra, and made it sublime, which entered into medicine and made it so powerful that, after all, allopathy is how many, 200, 300 years. If don't raise it to Hippocrates, that's exaggeration. But even if you take 300, 400 years maximum. But people survived before that. How did they survive? So there was a system which was operating. We have lost it. Even there, just as an aside, I have seen in Ayurveda, people are imitating allopathy. So you have pills for sinus, Ayurveda pills. You have Ayurveda medicines for corona. But that's never how Ayurveda works. So we have to rediscover them in the true spirit, true light. It's a very hard labor, and I am afraid we are still the followers of the easy path. So we want to reclaim our inheritance, which is very good, but we don't want to take the course through which they arrived at it. This is a problem. So we have inherited something, but we don't know. So that's why we are not able to read the real meaning. And then slowly, Indian mind started emancipating. See, then Sri Aurobindo is writing about it. And that's why we should, again, just here I am saying passingly, but you can never emphasize enough that this whole idea of Mayavad, honoring the sannyasin, talking of moksha the way it is understood, otherworldliness, as the ultimate acme of Indian thought must be abandoned by the human psyche. I mean, at least in India. Nothing wrong. There are people for whom that's ultimate. It's perfectly fine. India has accepted all varieties. But to make that as a national ideal is where the problem lies. Still to us, the seer and the sage and the saint is somebody who has renounced the world outwardly, abandoned life, left his family, left his job. We still value such a person. So we have forgotten Krishna, we have forgotten, of course, Sri Aurobindo, we have forgotten all these great ones who have set a different yardstick. So, when Sri Aurobindo now speaks about all this decline, and why the decline came when Indian spirituality shrank. It shrank from its many sided manifestation into some streams of sects, cults with certain practices. That's how it shrank. Always spirituality has been there in India, but it shrank into these little narrow movements. So that's the time when the European waves swept over India. Why it swept? It came to remind us. If you look at it, it's a grace. It came to remind us. There is a story in one of the Puranas where Vishnu Bhagwan goes into Patal, drawn by his devotees. Devotees are six of the ladies from Patal, and they really love him and worship him, and he's gone there. So now Lakshmi ji is having a problem naturally, and even the world is having a problem because he has to do his work. So he is very happy there because everybody is taking care of him, like doting on him. So ultimately she goes to her brother Shiva, please do something about it. So Shiva goes and challenges him. And so the fight starts. And as the fight becomes more and more fierce, Lord Vishnu begins to come into his glory. Finally, the Shiva threatens him with a trishul. And that is the time when Vishnu, Bhagwan, takes up his chakra. And then Shiva says, that's all that I wanted, to tell you who you are. And then he explains to his devotees that, look here, we understand. But that's not true love. That's not how you can bind a god. And then he returns. So this is a very interesting story. The Europeans came. They came because through Mayavad we declined. Buddhism we declined. And declined to a level. And it's okay, at one point we declined. Even today in the Indian religious discourse, it closes on with these things. Average Indian gives a lip service to the Gita. Even that he turns into moksha literature. So what I'm saying is basically a risk that Sri Aurobindo speaks about in the human cycle. And that is where we are not recognizing the fault line because we are looking at it from outside. The Muslims, the British, the Western world. We are not realizing that we ourselves, our own people, our Vedanta, Shastris and even Gurus, being part of a system and you are preaching an ideal which is not something which is good for India, good for the world, not good for the world either, is far more dangerous because we'll never recognize, we'll revere. And Sri Aurobindo speaks of this in the human cycle, that when it cannot obstruct by opposing, it joins. So there are several things which are going on. For instance, when the Western world says, Ramayana is all about, you can give a symbol and it's the left brain and the right brain. A neuroscientist speaks like that. We feel very proud and happy. This is such a nonsense. Ramayana is not a war between left brain and the right brain. We are so happy hearing all this. Or we reduce it just to an inner war. But Ramayana is a real war, a civilization battle. We turn it again back into just happening within me. So it's important to get our mind clear. In Indian thought, to summarize this part is, inner and outer have been conterminous with each other. Even today somebody asked a question that should we, a lot of people are being materialistic and, having wealth and this and that. Is it a good thing? What about the spiritual values? So, how did India look at it? Spirituality was the core. All else was flowing from it or its instrument. And if it could not become its instrument or did not flow from it, then its value was nil. So, money is not denied. Nothing is denied. But the core should be spiritual, which should use it. But in the Western world, what happened was this core is the swarth, the self as the body. And that's why it is destined to crash and collapse. It's nothing We don't have to do anything. It's going to collapse, because when you keep the core as the physical, then it's going to collapse. So we have to be very careful. It is the body is soul's instrument. Money has to be used for divine work. It has to be won over, as Sri Aurobindo says. Science, technology, literature, everything has to be won over for the divine work. So this is one part. Then Sri Aurobindo says, the first effect of this entry of a new and quite opposite civilization was the destruction of much that had no longer the power to live. The deliquescence of much else, a tendency to the devitalization of the rest. A new activity came in, but this was at first crudely and confusedly imitative of the foreign culture. So much that had lost its value was destroyed. That's what they did. And we suddenly felt as if, bare spirit, denuded of everything. There was logic. Girish Karnad film where Prasad is regarded as, he's unhygienic. It was promoted. That's when we had, communism and casteism and all this came in. And we just didn't know. We have no answer even till today. So it's where I felt that we must have the answers. But fortunately, the energy of life was there, sleeping only for a moment. For whatever temporary rotting and destruction this crude impact of European life and culture has caused, it gave 3 needed impulses. And that's what we should remember. It revived the dormant intellectual and critical impulse. So people at some point took the challenge. In whatever way, they started challenging. It rehabilitated life and awakened the desire of new creation. It put the reviving Indian spirit face to face with novel conditions and ideals and the urgent necessity of understanding, assimilating and conquering them. It's not closed quarters and rejecting, but assimilating, understanding and conquering. The national mind turned a new eye on its past culture, re-awoke to its sense and import, but also at the same time saw it in relation to modern knowledge and ideas. Out of this awakening vision and impulse, the Indian Renaissance is arising, and that must determine the future tendency. And just one more passage, then we'll take the examples. The recovery of the old spiritual knowledge and experience in all its splendor, depth and fullness is its first, most essential work. The flowing of this spirituality into new forms of philosophy, literature, art, science and critical knowledge is the second. An original dealing with modern problems in the light of the Indian spirit and the endeavor to formulate a greater synthesis of a spiritualized society is the third and most difficult. So we were talking about this third and most difficult part. That we have to take up these modern problems. For instance, let's now take up some of the narratives. So communism comes with a narrative that there is inequality among people. Is it true or not? It is true. We can't deny this fact. So they come up with a solution of flattening everyone, collective wealth and then distributing equally. You can't immediately deny the idea. So where it errs, that we have to see. Capitalism comes with a different idea. It says, yes, there is inequality, but we'll increase the engines of production. More and more people will become rich, so they can equally buy luxury. So both seem very appealing to the human mind. So what should be the Indian idea? Now, Mother gave some beautiful things in Auroville, and I think we are slowly moving towards that. One was she spoke about, and that's how we have to see these things. She spoke about currency going out of circulation and becoming more and more subtle. So I look at digital India as a spiritual movement. It's not just an economic thing. So we should not be talking just about temple economics. We should talk about more and more digital India. It is something where, see, this tendency for currency to be there, hoarding spirit, which if we look 50 years back or 30 years back, hoarding, which is a very bad tendency. It should be spent, it should circulate. The money is a force which needs to circulate. So this idea and ways and means through which money can be put into circulation to start with, doesn't matter. Buy products if you want to buy product, but don't hoard money. So this, it must go into circulation, because that is how it will reach. This one way to improve the economy in every way, and this we know nowadays. I mean, people, one of the yardsticks of economy. But still, how are we going to create this inequality? So mother gave that, she spoke of voluntary taxes. Now that may be a little difficult. But it requires a sea change of human consciousness. People can give voluntary taxes, I do believe. How they will give voluntary tax? Many of us, I am sure, have been doing it. I remember long back when in Air Force, when some people said, there are ways to save taxes. I said, it's going to Mother India. What is there? So there are many, many people who think like that, I'm sure. I've met friends who think like that. But now, why does it happen? It happens when you have a national consciousness. You can't do it unless you have a national consciousness. So the feeling of national consciousness, India as mother, is the root from where these things will spread. And India as mother should be instilled when we teach geography. It's not something which has to be put separately as a subject. When you teach, what prevents us from having our own view of geography? We don't look at countries as a piece of land. That's why we have jokers who keep saying India is it's a country, India is a mother. I mean, this is our vision, and we should promote this vision. So in our textbooks, instead of just modifying geography, means we have to look at it from the spiritual point of view, and we have always looked like that. We say Janani Janma Bhumi, Swargadapi Gariyasi. Why are we forgetting those truths? So Bande Matram as a way of greeting, yesterday we were talking about it. Bande Matram should become a way of greeting in schools. There should be in every school, maybe to start with, an exhibition of India and what it represents. Children are totally disconnected. And they should not, in the name of secular education, which has done so much harm. So it should be spiritual education. So every school, because education is an area, children are very malleable. And that's where it has to begin, that what India represents. If people can begin to believe, or this goes, if is a wrong word, one day it will happen. Because that is where the impulse will take us. Only it should happen smoothly, not through a catastrophe. Because unfortunately, see, when Britishers occupied India and others, then we started Vande Mataram mantra, Sri Aurobindo awakened. It should not happen like that. It should be a very natural process. That she's our mother. Now when you are giving to the mother, and where will this concept start? It will start in the family. I'm talking of very practical things. To save voluntary taxes, but when do... So, what happens in a family? In a family, what should children be taught? They should be taught to give. And the joy of giving, whether it be siblings or others, not just have. So these are small little things, but they shape the destiny of a nation. I have seen these two kinds of parents. Most of them are of the kind, okay, you want something, we'll buy it because they have the money. But family is the first stride of Vishnu where one learns to share. That's what family is about. School is another place where you learn to share. So if you learn to share and this goes into the system, then you'll have many more people very happily and voluntary. And then she says, those who have more contribute more. This, of course, is there by and large in the, taxation system. Ideal state is where people voluntarily give. And the third is the greed factor. Ultimately, if you see, the real problem is, now what does communism do? There is a state control. So what happens? What is the problem with that? The problem is there is no inner change. So when state starts controlling your wealth, state will end up controlling your thought. Which is what has happened. Because everybody is subject to the state. So you can't, state is the new king. Unfortunately, much worse because state is a faceless king. It's like a government. See, the advantage or disadvantage of government machinery is that there is nobody who is in a way answerable because there is somebody. Nobody, somebody, everybody, anybody. There's the problem people face when they go to government. Because he'll say, Saab kal aayenge, which Saab? So Saab has gone. So state control is a very problematic thing. So there has to be this spreading out of this. This is the culture which should spread. So when we speak about Indian culture, it's about these core values and they have to be implemented in a new way. If you look at it, this was the idea behind joint family, sharing the kitchen, all this. Community kitchens should come up more and more. These are real practical things. We don't find it in the West, incidentally. The only place where I have seen a community kitchen, it's not even as a community kitchen. Where was it? I am forgetting. Was it, anyways, Dubai or someplace? It was, guess what? Sarvana Bhavan. So I was very happy. So they said, ki you don't have to pay money, but you can offer. Now, everybody ends up offering more. And they make a huge profit. I asked them, how do you manage? I understood why. So this concept of offering, this is a change which must come in the psyche. Even as a doctor, people were asking me, if you do private practice, I said, I can't do. They said, still you will need money. Because how can you take money after healing because you know it's not you who have healed? It's a big problem. So I said we can keep an offering box, whatever people put, and surely it will take care. So this idea has gone completely. This is the westernized economy which has come here, of profiteering, of money making, of mall culture, where we are proudly paying off our wallet for, a 100 rupees shirt or a 50 rupees shirt for 500. This is the problem of capitalism. So you see, there are problem in both. And what is the problem? At the core, it is rotten. In capitalism, it's make money. So we all will make money. And we all will spend money on pleasure objects. So there is a problem. In communism, we'll distribute money. We'll control the money. We'll control everything. You don't have freedom of any kind for your religion, for your thought. So, Shobinda at one place says, communism is a dead thing. But if ever it comes back, it has to be on the basis of the old Vedantic idea. This is the Vedanta that needs to be preached, not metaphysical Vedanta that, there is a Brahman, Nirguna Gunen, people, all that, it goes on. Nirvana Ashtakam as the ultimate acme of Vedanta. No, for God's sake. It's beautiful, I'm not saying that. But this idea of Vedanta, if that all of us are deep within, we are one, along with the manifestation. But I'll come to that in a moment. So when we have this ideal, slowly, not just as an abstract metaphysical something, then we will be able to implement it. We don't need to know all those abstractions. Those are experiences meant for yogis. But at least we need to know that deep inside all of us are equal, and when we share with each other, we are basically following a Vedantic ideal. This is simple. Then comes the problem of caste and the divisions. So flattening, equality is equal to flattening. Now that's where we have to come up with our own solution, because often from the Western world now, this has come, and from the Marxist world and other worlds. So we need to understand. What we do is we end up just defending. All right, but first we should try to speak a language which people understand. So, a simple language is there differentiation in nature or not? There is differentiation. So, can you blur out all differentiation? You will be foolish. Nature is not about sameness. Second is that in this differentiation, each thing has its own place or not. Can you make the grass grow on the, sky and it will look absurd. Everything has its own unique place. So things should be in their own unique place. We have to discover that place. So that is also true. So this own unique place, differentiation, is what ultimately the outer social order called caste was. That is broken. Caste was never used, but that we have discussed, so I am not going into it. But it was the effort to put things in their proper places. And when you put things in their proper place, what should be at the apex? Human body will tell us. Apex is brain, knowledge, thought. But what should be at the core? Core is the heart, the dynamic impulsion. So that was the thing which has to be recovered. Sri Aurobindo says Brahma Tej and Kshatriya Tej. So it's not about Brahmins being there and Kshatriya being here. But the Brahma Tej, the power of thought, and Kshatriya Tej, the valor, the chivalry, that's where the Aryan ideal. All this where we have to teach at the school level. Children have to be taught to think. They don't know, they don't think. They just read textbooks. Again, this process has started very beautifully because it's Sri Aurobindo who has taken the country in his hands. Whether people recognize or not, this will happen. But we can make it more conscious. Children should be made to think about everything. And this is only possible if they are encouraged to question. So one of the problems that has taken place in India, again, out of excessive self-defense. That's what the problem of threaten is this. You feel threatened when a child questions. On the contrary, we should be happy that a child is questioning. And unquestioning obedience makes slaves. We don't want slaves. We want thought leaders, not thought slaves. So any child who unquestioningly accepts whatever the parents say, who blindly obeys the parents, see what kind of ideal we were preaching, is dangerous. You are creating clones. And clones get blurred over a period of time. They lose their power. So we should encourage children to question, encourage them to think, question everything. This has started. We can't stop it. So there are parents who feel very bad about it. Sometimes they become over defensive. I know children who say, in Diwali, crackers are really, too much sound and pollution. It's a correct thing. What's wrong with it? So we start becoming defensive. Oh, Hindu culture is under threat. Deepavali was never about crackers to start with. Where do you read that in Ramayana that when Rama came, there were crackers and loud noises? They were Deepavali. It is Deepa and it's so beautiful if you have Deep all around. So we become very, we feel threatened that on Christmas you can have crackers. No, we should not have on Christmas also. Loudspeaker. Yes, it's a noise pollution. Whether Ajan or Jagrata, because it's a pollution. So we have to bring in. So when we feel threatened and when we counter by having the same old forms, this is a danger. That you are going to shout from the top of the masjid, we are going to shout with a 400 watt loudspeaker. So this is where we have to bring back. What is Mata Ka Jagran? It's about the inner awakening. So all this we have to bring in as the new thought, and this can only happen if children are allowed to question. Nowadays they question, and if you don't answer, you say no, it is right, you see they are practicing this and our culture, then children turn away because they don't find it interesting. They in fact abandon everything. So they have to be allowed to question. Thought, that is what will bring the Brahma Tej, not installing Brahmin by surname. They'll become thought leader. You don't have to tell them that Brahmins or Kshatriya. Equally, we have to encourage valor through sports, through activities, adventure sports. Now all this has again started. So this has never been encouraged in school, but we have to encourage that. So this is where police, military, it should be well looked after. Why? Because it's the hub of Kshatriya Tej. You have to take care of them. They should feel proud that I am a policeman. Not somebody who is with a paunch belly and, taking money and afraid of gunda. It should be a matter of pride. These two things, military and police, should be a matter of pride. And NCC and all these activities. So these are the two things which we need to counter. It's our counter narrative that it's not caste system, but we do believe that there is a differentiation. We do believe that different people are meant for different things. So we have to understand that aspect, that we can't blur all people, everything is same. So that is one thing which we have to take care of. So this is the second part. Then there is this other narrative. So we have talked about communist idea of money, we talked about the caste system, and I'm not going into detail because each of this is a very fascinating. Then woke is another threat. So woke is, I went to Australia so recently. Their children were feeling, suddenly teachers say you can be whatever you feel like. So you can be man, and then you can be woman, and then, gender neutral. And how are we countering it? We are saying, we also had this. We had, Brahman Allah, we had Shikhandi. This is so absurd. I mean, of course it is understood. That's not the issue. The issue is we have to understand, is there in nature a masculine and feminine principle? So again we have to bring it to where nature is guiding us. There is a principle. Is this principle in nature only for the sake of sexual reproduction? No. This principle is everywhere and we have it in our language. Nadi behti hai, आकाश ऊपर स्थिर है, masculine and feminine. पृथ्वी माता है, आकाश पिता है. It's there embedded. That's why we have so many genders. They are not coming together and having children. So once we understand there are these two principles, this all again needs to be taught. How to bring out these aspects in creation through stories, through so many ways. So they are talking of gender in a purely sexual manner. And what is the sexual manner at the end? You can be gay and lesbian. Pura buddhi wahan ruk gaya hai. What shall I say? That's the most smallest aspect of it. That's not even worth filling your mind space with. But let's talk about, is there something called as masculine and is there something called as feminine? So then the other thing is say, yes, women have been depressed, oppressed, and therefore, what is the solution? They must, it starts with equal opportunity, which of course we agree, that part by it anyways, that the time spirit's a good thing. But then what happens? So, you have to treat them equal to man, okay? They imitate man, you'll be surprised. I don't know, maybe you may not be surprised, but there are many modern Indian women influenced by this idea of modernity, who instead of helping their husbands get rid of smoking and drinking, drink. I don't know about smoke, maybe smoke is anesthetic, but social drinking has become a way of life. Why? Because we never taught them your own power. That, if anything, should be the Durga Puja festivity, where these are the things which should be propagated during this time. Maybe through plays, maybe through, in the pandal, what a woman can become, that more innovative ways. It has started little bit, but what really is the feminine principle, what it can achieve? She doesn't need a man, Durga doesn't need a man to protect herself. This thought has come in some movies, but the common mind is still not occupied. It's still thinking in terms of the conventional. After all, Durga is a goddess, she's everywhere. She's a power that protects. She's not limited to a particular form. So we have to go beyond the outer forms into the truth which the spirit is trying to express. Of course, we have to be careful, because when you take off the outer form, there is a tendency to, because this form was maintaining a structure, so people take advantage. So you have to be clear. Like Kali is not like one movie or somewhere they had shown on the poster, smoking. She's a emancipated woman, freedom, moving without clothes. So we have to correct that narrative. Will come. But Kali is that, to worship Kali in the tornado, worship Kali in the, giant tide, worship Kali in, everything that is intense and strong. That's how one has to look at it. So this has to be brought back. So wokeism is trying to destroy all these things. As I keep saying, modernism destroyed faith. Everything has to be on the tula of reason. Okay? But we must also understand there is something beyond reason. How many of us, even spiritual people, are really, ultimately we are going back to rationally. There is something beyond reason, beyond the mind. Similarly, the postmodernism destroyed even reason. So see the two-step procedure. So even reason, it's your wish, fancy, whatever you like. So you have to understand the game and counter it. So women drinking is not about women. Man has destroyed himself drinking. You want the remaining also to be destroyed. Rather we should win back. Man has lost his way. So this is where we have to bring in these new narratives. So children, if you become a tree, so tomorrow what prevents a child from saying that I am a snake, or I am a jackal, or a hyena, I am a wolf. So you're snatching away. It's true. See, this is twisting a truth. So it is true that form and name they are using Vedanta reverse. And that's the dangerous weapon, because many of our people are getting caught. Yes, we also believe men and women are equal. Yes, they are equal, but that equality doesn't mean this. Similarly, this whole thing that, you can be a tree. Of course, one has become tree and everything, bird and beast and stone. But that doesn't mean you can do it in this way. This way you are going towards regression, towards all this labor which has brought out differentiation of forms and names. You have to go beyond it, not below it. So these are some of the thoughts of some of these agendas. So we have to solve it in our own way and tell them, excuse me, we have our own way of resolving these issues. We must acknowledge where the issue is there. Inequality is an issue. Strong caste barriers, wherever they are an issue, we need to resolve. We need to challenge the Brahmin. Where is your Brahmatej? We need to tell them that you may be a Brahmin by birth, so what? And we had those people in the Indian past. How was Satyakam a Brahmin? That's how we have to understand the spirit of Indian psyche. Same with marriage. Core is love, not a legal document. So many fields, so many areas where we see the changes coming up, and we need to take on these, giving Indian solutions to the modern problems. It's a vast subject, but I'll stop here, and there are questions. I'll be happy to take them.
In the present context, how we can give this false narration against the institutions?
Against the?
Institutions. For example, judiciary, election commission.
See, there is the other part. See, ultimately, if you take a narrative and keep correcting it, first we should set our house in order. We should be crystal clear what really is. First, the recovery of the Sanatana Dharma in its spirit. Then the forms, it'll find its own new forms. A woman should not be defined now by bindi. There's a WhatsApp circulating. That's not necessary to define a woman by bindi and sindhu. It was needed at one point of time. You never read this in description of. It was needed because, of various protection and all this. They had burqa, we had ghungat and bindi. It need not define by that. So first we must be very clear what these things are. And that requires education, adult education, child education. This is one of the effort, as you are saying. And this is how it can be disseminated. There is no other forced way. See, after all, judiciary, what are they? They are the products of this same system, no? Why are they running after woke? Because we never gave them an explanation of. So they have gone with this idea. This is what India is about. So many gods, they keep telling all these things. So first thing is that we should recover the spirit of Sanatana Dharma, then give it new forms. New forms in every field. Science, art, literature, poetry, that's sky. Geography, I gave an example. History. Why don't we teach them Ramayana and Mahabharata as authentic history? What is preventing us? Science. Why are we still teaching them? Why don't we understand the atom on the basis of the infinite and the action of Maya, which makes the seeming finite? What's the problem? You say it's not a science, say it's one of the theories proposed by Kanad, and that's how you look at it. So let people explore it. That there is a universal force which creates the seeming. See, it will actually solve the quantum theory problem. There is a force which acts upon something which is indivisible and makes it appear as divided. What's wrong with this? Why do you have to wait for a quantum physicist to try explore this to us? Because we don't take pride in it. We don't teach it in physics. For us, Vedanta is only about going towards the ineffable. We should teach it. It's so logical. Why don't we teach them about the constitution of matter and the Panch Tattva in a new way? Not in the traditional way, because then they say this Agni and that water. So all this is there. And Sri Aurobindo has actually given the secret of everything. Unfortunately, the national mind has not turned towards Sri Aurobindo. Very sad. So that's how it should be. That's how the judiciary come up. They don't understand. They understand by Agni this Agni, by water this water, and then they say what is all this Panch Tattva. Panch Tattva is there in atoms. So more and more teachers of this kind who can reveal the truth secrets. So many more such conversations, engagement. For instance, we are having nowadays coming together and the people talk about Indian culture and understanding Indian history. I feel there should be something which should be like Indian science, like Namaha. We started, this is the idea, healing in the light of, we, Sri Aurobindo, Mother, and so there is, now it may not be accepted by mainstream, don't worry about it. Discover these paradigms, throw these ideas, it's a war of ideas going on. So the scientific world should meet together. It has started actually, I must say, mathematics, it has started. These first things. And in the school, we should, wherever possible, implement it. Convents, people won't do. But
I think the school here is a leader in education.
not at all. Sorry to say.
So one of the principles is that we don't want to train our students for the outside world.
That is, see, Mother's words totally out of context people take. Because we don't want to train people for the outside world, Mother means that kind of race, rat race in which they go into, making money and ambition ladder. But every sphere of field of human activity has to be taken in its ambit. You have to learn how art can express something deeper and more beautiful, and that's what has happened here. Look at what Amal Kiran has done research on history. Amazing. So, it doesn't mean how we interpret it. So, that's very unfortunate that people interpret her words. So, but it's not yet the pioneer, the school here, it's very far from what it should be. Mother herself has said that we are very far from the goal. And in a way, it's a sobering thought. It's good to know that you are very far from the goal. So there is no leader in education right now, not only this school, any school I know, which looks at the totality of things in the light of the true Sanatan Dharma, if I may use the word, and tries to discover new forms. In fact, if you ask me, there are students here who have tried to do it, which is good. But it's not done anywhere. But still there is a lot to happen.
The village system played a very important role.
Which system?
Village.
Village system is very important role. And we have finished it because of the city culture. Cities are centered around desires. So why people run to the city? They run to the city because there is not enough, That's why all people with, who have given a thought to the subject, have always wanted to strengthen the village culture. And at least when I have grown up in a village, we had a little library, and I still remember, though very few books, but you go fondly to the library. So it should be like a self-sufficient unit like a commune. So minimum things, like a proper educational institute. Don't have too many things. We just clutter. One good library, one common, as I said, Sanja Chula, or community hall, not just for marriage. Organize events where community comes together, and you have some cultural activities, some eating together. These things, this life impulse should be brought out. It brings the sense of solidarity. So centralization, too much centralization is never good. It's like if the brain draws all the energy, the limbs grow weak, the heart grows weak. It should never be like that. Rather, brain should distribute. So village life should be strengthened. We have spoken about it. Much of it should be autonomous. And you should help develop its own educational institutions. Languages, very impoverished. Of course, this government tried, but there is so much resistance in Tamil Nadu and some places, unfortunately. People don't realize that the more languages you know, the better you are equipped for the outside world. I don't know why they had this resistance. But there should be more emphasis on languages, more emphasis on physical culture. That's very much missing. Physical culture brings so much confidence. Nothing else. Just do a lot of exercise. You grow confident because you feel happy and healthy in the body. Look at the Europeans, they pay so much emphasis on physical culture, America, all these places. So when they go out into the world, just because they are happy in the body, so we completely neglect the body. They walk confidently. They are small little things. Girls, physical culture, education. We are still stuck with during the periods, you should not do this, do not do this. What is this? These were rules of hygiene. They were valid at some point of time. Don't make them as... Then we are becoming like Islamic people who have so many, the sky book which prescribes do's and don'ts. So we have to bring our own idea of liberty. Our own idea of liberty is liberty of the soul. The freedom of the soul from ignorance. And outer discipline is meant to direct you towards that. Not otherwise. Otherwise it has no value. So everything that helps you connect with that deeper source of liberty, there is a goal, end point in that. And it's a progressive liberty. That's how our whole idea is. So, every sphere there is so much. That's why yesterday I was saying, bahut tamas hai. Too much of tamas. So I think that's for today. Please read Sri Aurobindo's Foundations of Indian Culture, now available as Renaissance in India. One last point that also in Karmi Yogin there are some articles. So one of them is East and West. Sri Aurobindo speaks about what we have to learn from the West, what West has to learn from the East. So what West has to learn from the East is that anything you build, you have to have the core as spiritual. So East has to be a leader in that sense. What we have to learn is to respect matter and to give humanity its due place. For the West, it's all about humanity and humanity. They understand it in this way, that all amenities, facilities and all that. So we have to understand that it's not only about inner moksha. Humanity also needs to progress at every level, every layer. So this is a big essay. Maybe some other time we can take it up. East and West. So best is read Sri Aurobindo these portions. And Foundations of Indian Culture has answer to everything. The Renaissance of India. That's how it's labeled. And this was precisely, Sri Aurobindo had written it when we didn't even know that the war of narratives has begun. It was a narrative thrown by this fellow, Mr. Archer, who was saying Indian civilization is nothing but some people who turn towards abstractions, metaphysics. At that time, Sri Aurobindo spoke all these things. Now we can understand. Mr. Archer is not dead. He is only assuming new forms. Okay? Thank you so much.